Conveying a narrative to an audience. That is storytelling. I'm going to power through 10 things to think about when we talk about storytelling. Characters, setting, plot, conflict, resolution, theme, point of view, tone, symbolism, and narrative. Now, we're gonna break those down in reference to this video game, Until Dawn. Number 1, characters. There can be one or more characters that can drive a plot, and in Until Dawn, there are certainly plenty of characters in this short story. Jessica, Beth, Ashley, Josh, Matt, Chris, Emily, Mike, and Sam. Although these are the main characters, there are other characters that are very important to this story of Until Dawn, but those are just the main ones that you are going to come in contact with most. Number 2, setting. Now, in my opinion, this was a perfect setting that the Studio Supermassive chose for this game, Until Dawn. They picked an isolated cabin that seemingly had no contact to the outside world. Number 3, the plot, the famous beginning, middle, and end of a story. Now, I'll be honest, this can appear really blurry in many stories, but in this story, Until Dawn, the beginning and the end and everything in between, it's all mixed up. It's all very blurry. But I personally had no issue with it, and I think that's why this story is something that people adore so much. Although it's really blurry and messy at times, everything ends up coming back around and making sense. Number 4, this is something that's really gonna pull you in. The conflict. Until Dawn creates multiple sources of conflict throughout this story. Now, whether it's through friends or enemies, this game will keep you guessing. Sometimes you're unsure of which it is. Number 5, resolution. This can often be 2 things. Is there anything resolved, or ultimately, how does this story end? That can typically be what we think about when we're talking about resolution. Number 6 being theme. Well, the theme here is pretty unique. You could say that the theme is dependent on your choices and the consequences to follow within those choices. Number 7 being point of view. This has to be one of the most crucial parts of this story of Until Dawn, the point of view, because your point of view is altering throughout the story, and it becomes unclear at times whose eyes you're seeing through. It's a bit confusing, but again, everything ends up coming back around and making sense. Number 8 is tone. Setting the tone in this game was clear out of the gate. Suspense and horror will pull you in and repel you all at the same time. I remember there was moments in this game where I wanted to just put down my controller and shut off my console, but I just really needed to find out what was gonna happen, and I found that it just kept pulling me in ultimately. Now, we got 2 left. Number 9, symbolism. Now, this can tend to be a little bit challenging to summarize, so I'll just pick 2 things that I found that really stood out to me as far as symbolism went. So totems that you pick up on the ground and take a look into were a huge symbol, because they can often show you what's to come, usually showing you something negative that can happen to you within the story, or something intense. Now, the other one will be butterflies. Oftentimes you'll see in the top left-hand corner of your screen, when you make a choice or a decision or something happens, you will see the butterfly effect come up, and you'll see a little fluttering of butterflies. Now, if you are unfamiliar with this means, it basically means that seemingly small choices can have lasting and often very large impacts to the story. Now, lastly, we have narrative. Point of view can have a really big impact on the narrative of the story, and you'll find that these 2 go hand in hand, point of view and narrative, throughout the entire storytelling, throughout the entire game of Until Dawn. That's how you masterfully tell a story. Looking back at many of my videos, you'll likely realize that games like Until Dawn are not typically my game of choice. That aside, I have been venturing into new game genres as of late, and I had this game recommended to me. I was surprised as to how little of actual control time you have in this game, but I would have to say that I was more pleasantly surprised than anything else. And by control time, I basically mean like you controlling the character and every single place they can go, thing they can do. You'll find the most impactful things in this game are often a direction that you choose or something that you choose to shoot over another thing. Now, being someone who typically plays games that involve constant control of your character or overall team, this was something I found refreshing. To give you a brief background, I've always enjoyed thriller and suspense movies, but horror movies wouldn't normally be my choice. Choosing games would be much of the same, except as far as the suspense and thriller side of games, I would honestly just avoid them altogether. Even though I like the aspect of thriller and suspense movies, I don't typically like to be the one in control of what happens in those scenarios. Having said that, I've been wanting something different lately and had Until Dawn recommended to me by my brother, who enjoys all types of games like this. Now, really briefly, let's get into the game. From the start, it was clear I had made some poor choices. My assumptions of what could happen just didn't seem to be well thought out on my end. My choices naturally developed as the story was unfolding, and I soon realized that making no choice at all was sometimes the best choice. Amidst all of this is a game that actually looks quite great considering the year it was made. Honestly, the graphics in regards to this game being made, I believe it was 2015, maybe in the characters, it's not surprising to see what the characters look like and how they talk, but the overall graphics to how the game performs, I thought was tremendous. I think for myself though, what surprised me the most was how every choice can alter your scenarios as you move forward in the story. Sometimes you realized that if you just made a different decision one choice before, you'd have put yourself in a much more favored position later on. Sometimes you may find yourself making a decision solely on what you think of a person, and then later on you're still stuck using them, or later you actually end up enjoying that character. This game brought me confusion, fear, and anger all throughout the story. And without getting into too much detail, if you are interested in playing a game that is refreshing and brings unexpected twists and turns, give Until Dawn a try. The cool thing about this game, the likeliness of a similar finish to mine would be extremely slim.